So at the Denver International Airport the other day, air traffic controllers lost communication with nearly 20 pilots for almost 6 minutes. Now I'm going to explain what happened, and then at the end, I'll tell you who's to blame for this near disaster. And I think it's pretty clear where the blame goes. But first, I want to say that I think this could have easily ended in a tragedy, right? Like 6 minutes of lost comms at a busy airport like Denver. It's a miracle that there wasn't a collision or a crash. And I know that there's, protocols for pilots in case they lose communication with the air traffic controllers. Like, for example, if a plane is prepared to land and they all of a sudden lose communication with or connection with the controllers, they'll likely just stay up in the air, right? And then wait until comms are reestablished. But at a busy airport, when comms are lost suddenly, it could happen right as a plane is descending on the runway, or, right as another plane is about to take off. So the situation is very scary. So first, let's look at the facts. I have an article from Denver 7 ABC News. I'm not going to read the whole article, just some highlights for you guys. As many as 20 pilots flying into the Denver International Airport on Monday afternoon were unable to speak with air traffic controllers for up to 6 minutes due to multiple radio transmitter outages, several sources have confirmed. The frequency outage occurred at the Denver Air Route Traffic Control Center, which ensures that aircraft have adequate spacing up in the sky as they approach their destination. It is one of 22 such centers in the country and serves a large region in 9 states. Multiple sources confirmed that the outage occurred around 2 p.m., leaving between 15 and 20 aircraft unable to speak with air traffic control during a critical time. It says a controller was eventually able to contact one pilot on what's called a guard line, which is typically used when a pilot is in distress. And that pilot was able to contact the other aircraft in the area to tell them to change frequencies. They interviewed an air traffic controller, and the guy said, the biggest risk is you have airplanes that you're not talking to. And then, therefore, the pilots have to try to figure it out themselves. He said, quote, "It's one thing to lose track of one airplane because you can't communicate with them, but to lose track of all of the airplanes that you had to communicate with," he said. And from my understanding, in this situation, they still had radar coverage. So it's like watching a car crash happen, but not being able to do anything about it. So they could see the planes on the radar, but they didn't have comms available to talk to them. That is really scary. It's reported that aging infrastructure and low staffing has been a consistent issue for the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and this guy speculates that this incident could have been a direct result of having old equipment. It's not acceptable, he said. And the biggest problem is the fact that the FAA does not have stable funding to replace this equipment and maintain it in an appropriate fashion. And then the article goes on to talk about some other areas of the country where air traffic control are having a problem with infrastructure and staffing, and it's causing, mass hysteria. Last week in a press conference, Sean Duffy, who is Trump's transportation secretary, addressed the outdated infrastructure at airports. He said, "We should be using fiber, but it's copper. We use radar from the 70s. Some of them are from the 80s, but most of them are from the 70s, he said. So this technology is 50 years old that our controllers used to scan the skies and keep airplanes separated from one another." Okay. The end of the article states that the Department of Transportation is going to ask Congress for billions of dollars to invest in the infrastructure and the technology to ensure that, the computers, the technology they're using is up to date, which is wonderful. I support that completely. I also have an article from AP News, the organization that Trump thinks is fake news now, simply because they won't coddle his nutsack every time they get the chance to, just like CNN and other corporate media will. This article's from back in February, and if you remember what happened, in the middle of February, a couple weeks after he took office, Trump signed an executive order to cut hundreds of positions from the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and soon after, I'm not saying there's a direct correlation here, but use your brain, everyone. There were several large collisions between airplanes, and there was a major one. An airplane crashed with a helicopter, and many people died. And it was the first time in decades, I believe, or one of the first ones in decades, where we had a commercial airplane crash, on our land. And people had died. So it was a huge deal. It was reported back in February that about 400 personnel from the FAA were let go. and I'm sure there's been more since. Many of these included aviation safety assistants, maintenance mechanics, and nautical information specialists. These are the type of workers tasked with helping aircraft safety inspectors, repairing air traffic control facilities, and updating digital maps that pilots use in flight. The article says the loss of these personnel is going to have long-term safety implications. Just work that simply can't be done. The article says it comes as Americans' confidence in air travel has fallen. And this is back in February. So if you think now, there's been several collisions since. There's been multiple stories that have come out, like the one that I'm covering in this video, where air traffic controlling systems have failed. So it comes as Americans' confidence in air travel has fallen since a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines passenger jet collided in January at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. In that first round of firings where the 400 people were let go, and I think there's been many more since, but in that first round, 18 air traffic control facilities lost maintenance mechanics, employees who worked on electronic issues, that sounds familiar, and other building repairs at those facilities. As short-staffed as air traffic controllers are, there are about 3 air traffic controllers for every technician. So all of these technicians have been let go, and that's obviously not a good thing. I've been hearing this number thrown around a lot, and it sounds like about 90% of all air traffic controllers are understaffed right now throughout the country. 90%. Holy hell. That is scary just to think about. And then on top of that, we're cutting technicians. We shouldn't be cutting any positions, in these agencies because nearly everywhere is already understaffed. So that's basically what happened. Denver very narrowly avoided a huge catastrophe. In my opinion, they got very lucky. I claimed at the beginning of this video that I was going to put the blame on someone. Now, obviously, the Trump administration has cut over 400. I'm sure it's way more than that now. Employees from the FAA at a critical time where we've had several plane crashes, we've had outages. We should be increasing funding drastically to improve the systems, to improve the technology, to make sure that the 90% of all air traffic controllers, which are understaffed, get fully staffed. However, there is a light at the end of this tunnel here. So apparently the Trump administration, their proposed fiscal year 2026 budget, to my surprise, includes a $359 million increase to FAA operations. And they say this is intended to support hiring and salary increases for air traffic controllers. I totally support that, as well as updating the FAA's telecommunications systems. There we go. Acting a little bit too late, in my opinion, but I don't know if $359 million is enough to update, the telecommunication systems, in all air traffic controllers, and it's certainly not enough to ensure that the 90% of them who are understaffed are fully staffed. It's a good start, right? I mean, $359 million, I guess that could go a long way. And I definitely support increasing the salaries because right now people are going through some traumatic shit. Like in Denver, if I was working in that air traffic control system there during that 6-minute outage, as soon as the communications came on board, I would have had to leave. I would have felt like my heart dropped. It would have been, I would have been scared. Yeah, that would be really scary. That'd be scary as hell. I don't think I could do it. So what's already a scary job, like you have so much responsibility on your hands and you have to be on your A game at all times, especially at busy airports. They also have, more workload because so many, 90% of air traffic controllers are understaffed. I know right now that the Republican budget is having some issues getting, enough support to potentially get passed. I guess the blame goes to Congress in general for not prioritizing over the past decade or two, updating our systems, updating our technology to ensure it's not from the 70s. The Trump administration didn't make it better, right? Like causing mass hysteria by firing 400 officials from the FAA at a time when we have, unprecedented number of plane crashes in our skies and unprecedented uncertainty and hesitancy from the general public on flying, like in general. So yeah, to fix this problem, Congress needs to pass a budget that includes a massive budget increase for the FAA. All those 400 people that got fired need to be reinstated. Everyone needs salary raises. All the telecommunication systems, all the technology needs to be upgraded to fit the times we are in, right? These are common sense things. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, see y'all later.